So today I thought I'd jump on the bike. Well, not really. It's actually from a trip that we took to the Catskills a few weeks ago. But we're on Peekamoose Road, Route 42, running through the Catskills. And I thought we'd talk about something that is in the news here lately. And that is, of course, the woes of Harley Davidson. It seems that Harley Davidson is once again in the news and the fodder for many YouTube commentators who seem to know just what Harley Davidson needs to do in order to turn their misfortunes around. As a non-Harley rider, I have no skin in the game, but I do watch these videos with a great deal of fascination. I am sure we have all heard the numbers before, so I won't repeat them here, and I know that we've all read about the boardroom struggles that they've been going through recently. Now, while Harley is still the biggest U.S. motorcycle manufacturer by a large margin, their sales are down, but so are U.S. motorcycle sales in general. Interest rates remain relatively high compared to the lows of the post-crash economy, and Harley has, in my opinion, painted themselves into a corner with their very successful decades-long marketing strategy aimed at a single rider demographic. Recently, I had the opportunity to spend some time in Harley Davidson dealerships, both over the winter watching some seminars and when my travel companion's Pan America needed some repairs. In both instances, the dominant Harley culture and stereotypes were prominently on display. The showroom was filled with large, expensive baggers and touring bikes, and of course, an extensive selection of t-shirts. And yes, I bought one. Or more precisely, Kevin got it for me to make up for me having to sit there and wait for his bike to be fixed. In both instances, the riders who visited the shop were exactly the kind of person that you would expect. Older, clad in blue jeans, work boots, and black t-shirts. Many also sported some great chin whiskers. Everyone I met was friendly and kind. So my observations are not about whether or not HD riders are good people. Of course they are. Rather, visiting a few Harley Davidson dealerships underscores the success of their marketing efforts during the 90s and early 2000s. Over and over again, we were told what a Harley Davidson rider looked like and what they believed in. That is, things like patriotism, heritage, and freedom. Of course, there is nothing wrong and much right with these values, and they appealed to many in my generation. However, what happens when the future generations no longer place the same emphasis on things you have based your entire marketing strategy on for more than 40 years? Any other company would pivot and change with the times. However, Harley Davidson has a problem because appealing to a new generation of rider means alienated the core demographic that has gotten them to this point. Harley Davidson worked hard to paint themselves as an icon and symbol of personal style, but now those true believers are dwindling in number. Harley is stuck between the proverbial rock and a hard place, wedged between needing to attract new, younger riders while still satisfying the old guard. So I thought it might be interesting to take a look at a few of these claims I've seen from YouTubers who are also Harley Davidson riders, and let's look at them from an outsider's perspective. Just the other day, I watched a video from one of those YouTubers talking about how Harley Davidson should resurrect bikes with a more modern version of the Knucklehead, which was produced from 1936 until 1947, or even the Panhead, which was made from 1948 to the late 60s. While this may sound nostalgic for those good old days, let me point out that during these times, Harley Davidson was not the powerhouse manufacturer they are today. In fact, other than a post-war boom during the 50s, HD often struggled to stay afloat, especially during the 60s and 70s. In those decades, Harley was getting their butts kicked by Japanese manufacturers who produced fun, affordable bikes for the baby boom generation who were entering their late teens and 20s. These years were the major growth decades for the U.S. motorcycle market. At the start of the 60s, only a couple 100,000 bikes were being sold, but by the peak in 1973, more than 1 million motorcycles were purchased by young baby boomers. At the high point, 80% of all bikes sold in the U.S. were Japanese, and 50% were Hondas. Harley was barely a blip on the radar screen. It was during this downturn that Harley sold out to AMF in 1969. Returning to these times would mean making bikes that very few people were actually buying new. The truth is that Harley Davidson's allure of heritage is largely a marketing gimmick. Yes, the company has been in existence since 1903 in one form or another, but for the majority of those years, the motor company has just been trying to get by. It was not until the 1990s that Harley became the juggernaut of the U.S. biking culture that we know today. Again, this growth from the bottom of the barrel to selling 1 in every 3 motorcycles in the United States was again the response to baby boomers moving into their 40s and 50s. During these years, the economy was good. We were blowing up the dot-com bubble and the housing bubble, and Americans were going through a kind of midlife renaissance in which they longed to return to the pastime of their younger years. But this time, they no longer wanted inexpensive Japanese bikes. They wanted something more classy that fit with their big SUVs and McMansions. Harley Davidson was smart enough to catch this wave and even encourage it with targeted marketing campaigns. They saw that middle-aged boomers were more than willing to pay premium prices for a premium product, and the margins were much better for big baggers and touring bikes than small entry-level machines. As an outsider, when I look at the current Harley Davidson lineup, it is remarkably similar to the offerings from 1995. Back then, HD models were made up of cruisers, baggers, and big touring bikes. Sure, names have changed, the cosmetic lines have been cleaned up, which is an improvement in my opinion, and technology has been upgraded, but the same basic styles of bike are still offered today. Yes, you can no longer get the air-cooled Sportster, having been replaced with a water-cooled Revolution Max engine version, and now they offer the Pan America. But largely, the lineup has not changed that much. I know some would argue that any change is bad and equates to treason. But from an outsider's perspective, I don't get all of the consternation about abandoning the core rider. To me, it looks like 80% of what Harley is offering is the same as it's always been. While it's true that both American brands, Harley Davidson and Indian, are upscale premium offerings, I wondered just when it has been any different. Maybe back in the 1970s when AMF owned the Bar and Shield logo, but certainly not since the motor company was taken over by the current group of investors back in 1981. To illustrate just who Harley was marketing to, here is a quote from Clyde Fessler, a former Harley Davidson VP, made at a marketing conference in 1998. "What we sell isn't actually a bike. It's the ability for a mild-mannered accountant to dress in leather, ride through a small town, and have people be afraid of him." And Willie G. Davidson was known to have said that Harley Davidson is not just a motorcycle, it's a lifestyle. We're selling an emotional experience, a sense of freedom and identity. Since 1981, and especially during the major growth years between 1993 and 2007, Harley Davidson motorcycles were marketed as exclusive, unchanging symbols of American freedom that came with an exclusive price. And of course, to be part of the culture and to make the bike your own, there were endless parts and accessories available for prices in line with the exclusivity of owning a Harley Davidson motorcycle. Back then, nobody complained. It was all part of the fun and enjoyment of owning American-made muscle. The economy was good, and as I said before, the housing bubble and dot-com bubbles were in the process of inflating, and baby boomers were becoming empty nesters. What did the 40 and 50-year-old with a dad bod want? Well, big, powerful, comfortable motorcycles. This is when the bagger became the major profit center in American motorcycles. And how can you blame Harley Davidson for going along with what everybody wanted? It wasn't just Harley Davidson that capitalized on the trend for expensive, customized bikes. The media did as well, with shows like Biker Build-Off and American Chopper during the early 2000s. Now, none of this was about making the everyman's motorcycle. Back in the 1960s and 70s, it was the Japanese making the working man's bike, and today it is still the likes of Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, as well as Triumph and Royal Enfield satisfying the need for less expensive entry-level motorcycles. From my perspective, at least since the mid-1990s, it has never been Harley Davidson's goal to be anything other than a premium offering. Just recently, Harley listed their average customer as a 47-year-old male making more than $90,000 per year. Now, there's nothing wrong with being successful, but this illustrates the idea of Harley Davidson as a working man's bike just being a myth. Continuing with the theme, this one is true, at least for now. A new entry-level bike is reported to be on the horizon, but we shall see what HD has up its sleeve. Will it be something completely new, or will it be the Indian-made X350 and X500 bikes that now wear the Harley-Davidson badge? The last time Harley tried to make a lower-cost bike was in 2013 when they introduced the Street 500 and Street 750. These were part of the More Roads to Harley Davidson initiative introduced by Matt Levatich, the then CEO. Unfortunately, the new entry-level models were doomed to fail just as much as the tenure of Matt Levatich as Harley Davidson CEO. I have heard some YouTubers criticize Harley for canceling these bikes and leaving new riders out in the cold. But the truth is that they were not well received by the Harley faithful. They were not air-cooled cruisers, they were not made in the United States, and they did not fit the bill of what a Harley Davidson should look like. On top of that, the quality and performance did not compare to other foreign offerings. The bikes did not sell, so they were canceled. Can Harley create an entry-level bike that is competitive with the likes of Royal Enfield, Triumph, and Honda? All of these manufacturers have models that young riders can get on for $6,000 or $7,000. Can Harley do that and make it in the United States so that its core riders don't revolt? Right now, there are many complaining that bikes with the Revolution Max engine will be made in Thailand, at least for the immediate future. They do not see them as real Harleys, nor do they see the smaller displacement bikes made in India as true Harley Davidson. Harley is criticized for not having an affordable entry-level bike, and rightly so. But the same people making those criticisms also say that the bike must be made here in the United States. I mean, is that even possible? Sure, Indian Motorcycles makes a Scout in Spirit Lake, Iowa, but is hardly an entry-level bike when it starts at $10,000 and it's over 1,100 cc's. So what will happen with this new entry-level bike? Will it be made in the US? Will it be priced low enough to compete with Japanese and India-made motorcycles? Will the core Harley-Davidson rider accept it? Will it be called a girl's bike like the Sportster 883 was? Are there enough young people who want to ride to make the new entry-level bike profitable? I guess we shall see. Now, I have to admit, this one kind of made me smile. The idea that big, tough, hairy bikers need their motorcycle to be considered a pop culture icon, something like Marilyn Monroe, the Beatles, or Cabbage Patch Kids, was kind of funny. I know that to many, Harley Davidson motorcycles are a symbol of Americana and individual freedom, but to me, it just doesn't matter. The fastest growing segment of riding in the US is the adventure segment, and the only growing demographic is female ridership, which now makes up more than 20% of motorcycle owners. Do either of these groups care about owning icons as much as older male riders do? This gets back to the heritage thing. Icons don't change. However, if you don't change, don't evolve, eventually society will grow away from you, just like it grew away from the Beatles. I mean, sure, my generation still reveres these icons, but the younger generations would rather listen to The Weeknd, who has a #1 song on Spotify, as I make this video. I know there are still people who want to live the quote biker lifestyle, but that number is contracting every year. Those of us who like to dress up in leather and black t-shirts can yell all we want that Harley just needs to pay attention to us, but the truth is, whether we like it or not, the big demographic tidal wave is coming fast. Sure, when I was young, I listened to my parents' records from the 50s, but by the time I was 12 or 13, I wanted to listen to my music. I didn't want to adopt the culture of my parents, and kids today don't want to adopt Boomer or Gen X culture. They want to make one of their own. Harley had a great 30 or 40-year run, but everything has its day, and if they do not reinvent themselves as something that speaks to the younger generations, they will continue to die a slow death. Seriously, have you been to a motorcycle rally lately? It's all old dudes and dudettes over 40. Most of us pushing 60 or 70. And yeah, they look like me. In closing, let's use Triumph as an example of a brand that is growing during this same downturn for American motorcycles. In 2024, Triumph surpassed 100,000 units sold for the first time. They actually sold 134,635 bikes. That's a 64% growth rate over 2023. Triumph did this by having a global strategy. Sales in the Americas, that is America, Canada, and Brazil, grew by 44%. Sales in Asia by 30% and Europe by 18%. In addition, they are now selling nearly 30,000 bikes in the expanding market of India. Triumph now offers a wide range of styles, including motocross bikes, and a wide range of prices, including sub-$6,000 models. Can Harley do something like this? It was the plan Matt Levitich had in mind before he was booted out. Would the core Harley Davidson rider put up with this kind of strategy? It would require manufacturing outside of the United States and the expansion of their non-cruiser models. From much of the commentary I have seen, this approach would not fly. Harley needs to return to its roots, they say. The problem is, that is pretty much what they've been doing all along, and look where it has got them. But as I said in the beginning, this is just my opinion as a Harley Davidson outsider. Ride safe, and of course, keep squeezing your lemon.